Hello. Hello. Test.
سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. أشهد أن اللهم صل على محمد. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله عليه الصلاة والسلام على محمد. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله صلوات الله عليه وآله وسلم. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. اللهم اجعل قلبي بارا واملي سارا شفاء رزق دار ولا ذبرار واجعل عندك كبر النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم مستقر وقرار برحمتك يا رب. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى والذي خلق السماوات والأرض بغير عمد ترونها تبارك وتعالى هو الأول والآخر وإليه المنتهى. نحمده ونستعينه ونثني عليه ونؤمن به، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف بريته ومبلغ رسالاته العبد المؤيد الرسول المسدد المحمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. Brothers and sisters, in this month of Muharram, this very holy and sacred month, I invite all of us to live up to that which Imam Hussein did what he did for, which is Islam and taqwa and obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Hussein gave everything so that you and I can live our lives within the boundaries of Islam and secure our afterlife. Nothing complicated. He did the hard work so that we don't have to go through it, inshallah. What I want to go through, inshallah, in these two khutbahs today is a little bit of explanation of some of the benefits of the remembrance of these majalis that we have in these months. The benefits, the reasons why, the wisdoms behind why we do what we do through the Quran. So we want to go through, inshallah, 3 verses today. And just to solidify, just to reinforce this idea of the remembrance of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. So someone might ask, oh, is there verses in the Quran that tell us that we should do what we do? Brothers and sisters, as you all probably already know, it's not like every single thing we do in life is going to have a verse of Quran for it specifically. A lot of times, what we do, the way we live our lives as Muslims, they fall under the more general categories that Islam has dictated to us. For example, the prayer, the Quran will say you need to establish prayer. Will it get into details? It won't get into details necessarily. We get the details from elsewhere. Each school of thought has their own methodology and epistemology. But at the end of the day, everyone is somehow, in one way or another, to qualify as a Muslim, they are following the general guidelines set forth by the Quran. And for the details, they will go to Rasulullah if those details have not been mentioned in the Quran directly. So here also we will have, I want to go through some verses. In this month of Muharram and Safar, it's nice to also go to the Quran a little bit. Go to the Quran, our scholars have pointed out some of the verses that we can use. Now obviously, when I say we can use these verses, I'm not saying that this should be our argument in front of those who are not Shia and say, see, the Quran is telling us that what we're doing is appropriate or right or whatever, and you should accept it. No, this is for ourselves, brothers and sisters. You know, usually people sometimes they feel like to be on the right path, they have to disprove all the other paths and prove themselves to all the other paths. No, don't worry about the others, brothers and sisters. Let's focus on what we're doing and see how the Quran helps us in this regard as well. So this is not an argument for non-Shi'i. No, this is for ourselves to just reinforce and give us more motivation to understand that, okay, this what we're doing also falls under the general guidelines of the Quran. How is that? 3 verses I want to share with you today. Hopefully we can go through it without going too long. There is one verse of the Quran that we have. It says, Surah Shura, verse 23. This is going to be an easier one. I left the best for last, inshallah. This one's going to be an easier one, a more basic one. It says, Surah Shura 23, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى. That, O Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, say to the people that I do not ask any reward for what I'm doing for my prophethood, except al-mawadda fil qurba. I demand your love for my close ones, my relatives. Obviously, at the top of this list is going to be the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, correct? All right, so he's asking for this, which interestingly, let me say this on the side, when you look at other verses that use the exact same wording for other prophets, when those prophets are arguing with their people, speaking to their people, they're telling their people, La as'alukum alayhi ajra. And then the verse ends, the statement ends. That I don't ask you for anything. I don't ask you for an ajr, a reward, something in return for what I'm doing for you, which is teaching and preaching to you how to secure your akhirah. In those verses, it says, those other prophets of Allah, they say, La as'alukum alayhi ajra, period. I don't ask for any compensation. I don't ask for anything in return. In ajriya illa ala Allah. My ajr, my reward is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what the prophets would say. But then when it comes to our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. That I ask and I want you to make sure that you show love to my progeny, my family, my close ones. So this is interesting that out of all the prophets of Allah who didn't want anything in return, here the Prophet is as if he's saying, I want one thing in return. And so you're thinking to yourself, oh, what's it going to be? Is it going to be a car? There were no cars back then. Is it going to be something of monetary value? This, that? No. Al-mawadda fil qurba. And there are lectures on this topic of what this mawadda entails and all of that. But what we're going to say in a nutshell is that, okay, we have to have a love towards the Prophet's family. What better way to show our love to the Prophet's family and progeny is other than remembering them, mentioning their name, putting their name on our children, let's say, things like that. all of these commemorations that we do, remember when we get together like this, what is said on the minbar of Imam Hussein alayhi salam? What is said on it? All of those things that we need to learn about the deen, a lot of them are coming up on this minbar. Things that sometimes nowadays, mashallah, you look around, you look at the topics that are being covered in different parts of the world by English speakers, you're like, wow, this is like a lot of contemporary relevant stuff. And even this year, Shaykh al-Sa'di, inshallah, everyone benefited from him and what he has an expertise in. He has expertise in a lot of things, but especially family and parenting and all that kind of stuff. I got a lot of good feedback from the others, especially the younger ones. The older ones, brothers and sisters, the older ones, I always say this, you're already going to go to Jannah. So we're not worried about you guys. Yes? If I want to hear about Muharram more, this and that, these topics, our younger ones have to, inshallah, make it to Jannah to be with you in the future, inshallah. And so, yeah, you see that there's a lot going on now, mashallah. All because of what? This showing love for Imam Hussein. In other words, one of the best ways to show love is to remember, to see what their cause was, to push their name forward. Their name comes with the cause, and so on. Yes? To the point that even our ulama, they'll say that when you ask them, well, why is salawat so mustahab? Why are there so many rewards for reciting salawat? Yeah? One of the answers that is given is because when these names are mentioned so much on your tongue even, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, oh Allah, send your blessings upon them, send your special mercy upon them. This itself is indirectly and subconsciously telling us that these are the role models. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Think about it. Every day, if you were to send salawat on some celebrity out there today, yeah? Allahumma salli ala, I don't know, whatever, some famous person, Amin Rustani, let's say. And then you do this all the time. This person's name is remembered in a good way for you every day. Subconsciously, this has an effect. I'm not saying this is the only reason why salawat is mustahab, but one of the things that our ulama have pointed out is these names have to be remembered and mentioned. Well, these names are remembered and mentioned when you love that person. So when it says, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. One of the examples of mawaddata fil qurba and showing love is these things that we do. Now, obviously, I always say this, and I always get in trouble for it, that if we can do this for 2 months and 8-9 days, yeah, for the imams, it seems that they would like us to do this much after the Muharram as well, but when it comes to the Quran and the other teachings and other classes and other educational work that we're doing for Islam as well. Yes? All right. Parentheses closed, brothers and sisters. Next verse, Surah Al-Hajj, or Hajj, verse 32. This one's going to be a little bit more elaborate. It says that ذَلِكَ وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. That whosoever sanctifies, glorifies, gives importance to, yes, ta'zim, from adamah. Whoever gives glory to and gives importance to the sha'airullah. This is a term that we have in Islam. The sha'air of Allah. Those things that are the sacraments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The things that Allah cares about the most. Yes, and these are lots of times ritualistic things. They have, or symbolic of things. And the best example for that the Quran itself has spoken about and referred to as sha'airullah is the Hajj and the things that happen, the actions that take place in the Hajj. I'll get to that in a minute. ذَلِكَ وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ. Whosoever, yes, gives importance to, glorifies, magnifies the sacraments of Allah, this is a sign of taqwa al-qulub. This is a sign of a person having proper God-wariness within them. They care about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what are these sha'airullah? Let's talk about these a little bit. Those things, those symbols, those sacraments that remind you of Allah, that reflect Allah almost completely and His satisfaction and His will. So for example, you'll have Masjid al-Haram itself. End of sanctity, the highest level of sanctity is there. To the point that Imam Hussein says, my blood cannot be spilled in here because the sanctity of the Kaaba will be compromised if I do so. And so he leaves. Yes? Others stayed, like Abdullah bin Zubayr. Yes, sometimes you spend from the Kaaba for yourself, sometimes you spend yourself for the Kaaba. Yes, you are expendable for the Kaaba, not vice versa, but there were some in the past that did that. To the point that Abdullah bin Zubayr, you all know the story because it's in that movie, right? The Mukhtar movie, Abdullah bin Zubair eventually sought refuge in the Kaaba. They destroyed the Kaaba to get their hands on him post Yazid death. Yazid has sent an army. He dies before the army does what it's supposed to do, but the army continues with its going to its accomplish its mission, and eventually they destroy the Kaaba to get their hands on Abdullah bin Zubair. Imam Hussein taught us, Sha'airullah are everything. And so I'm not going to sacrifice Sha'airullah for myself, it's going to be vice versa. He left Mecca so that his blood doesn't get spilled there. All right, so that's one example. Masjidul Haram, Allah's not in the Kaaba. No one goes to the Kaaba and says, Assalamu alayka ya Allah, because you're buried here or something. No, Allah's not there necessarily. No, but there's a sanctity here. Why? Because this is one of the Sha'airullah. Another example, Safa and Marwa. Those two hills. The Quran explicitly says, these are Inna Safa wal Marwa min Sha'airillah. The Quran says this. That Safa and Marwa, these are some of the sacraments. Okay? Another one, it's interesting. وَالْبُدْنَ جَعَلْنَاهَا مِنْ شَعَائِرِ اللَّهِ. The budna, which is referring to the sacrificial animals of the Hajj. The Quran says these are even sha'airullah. This animal has a label on it, the label of Allah. You know, sometimes something, back in our day, I mean, it's still out there, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just going to use it as an example. Back in our day, there was a Payless shoes. All right? In school, if you bought shoes from Payless, I've been through this, all right? You would get mocked in school because of that. Is the shoe any better or worse than some of these brand name shoes? Not necessarily. Although I will tell you, I put them to the test and it was pretty bad quality. Back then, I don't know how it is now, okay? Yeah, sometimes, let's just imagine that they have the same quality, yeah? But one has the logo on it, one doesn't have the logo on it. How much of a difference is there? One goes for $200, one goes for $20. Why? The label is what brings the credibility. The label, even if the quality is worse than the $20 one, but because it has the label on it, it's important now, it's valuable now, right? Okay. Budna, those sacrificial animals, and there's different types of Hajj. I don't want to get into the ahkam. One of those Hajj that has to do with those who are, if I'm not mistaken, living in Mecca, when they go for Hajj, it's a little different, their ahkam, than those of us who are living far away from Mecca. In those ahkam, we will have those who are bringing their sacrificial animal with them. When we go for Hajj from out here, we don't take our animal with us from here. Ain't nobody putting no sheep on the plane, you know what I'm saying? Right? But there are some who will bring their animals from their home for sacrifice. Those are the ones who are living there. This animal, from what I remember, either it's mustahab or it's necessary to put a mark on it somehow. So everyone knows this animal is one that's going to be sacrificed in Mina. This animal becomes so holy and sacred now. Why? It was just a little sheep before this, yes, but now it has the label of Allah on it. Now it's one of Sha'airullah. Yeah. And so now it has to be preserved, it has to be taken care of, it has to be sanctified, it has to be just like the camel of Salih. Camel of Salih, just like any other camel. But then once Allah says, this one is associated with me in a special way, yes, along with that comes responsibility and sanctity. Now, having said all of this, one of these ulama, he said it very nicely. I want to say this. This is the verse talking about Sha'airullah. What do we have? We have the Kaaba is one of the Sha'airullah. But what is the Kaaba? Is it anything other than just stone and the fabric and the curtain that they put on it and all that? That's all it is really. And Imam Ali talks about this in Nahj al-Balagha as well. He says, look, there's nothing special about this land in and of itself. If you look at it from a natural terrain perspective, it's one of the worst places actually. Imam Ali talks about this in Nahj al-Balagha. Yeah? So there's nothing special in and of itself of the Kaaba, correct? But it's become one of the sha'air. Is there anything special about Safa and Marwa in and of itself? Not necessarily, it's just two hills, yeah? But because it's a reflection of obedience of Allah, satisfaction of Allah, and so on, yeah, it becomes very important. Safa and Marwa, it's two hills that Hajar, Bibi Hajar, ran from one to the other and back. That's all it is really. But because it symbolizes ultimate sacrifice, ultimate obedience to Allah and submission to Him, it becomes one of the sha'airullah. You get what I'm getting at here now? Is there anything special about the animal? I just said it. No, the animal is an animal. You just put a label on it. You just marked it. Yeah, that's all you did really. But now it's a sacrificial animal. There's somewhat of an association with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But all of these come under the umbrella of obedience and submission to Allah and the ruh and spirit of the Hajj, which is a spirit of submission to Allah and going for Allah's satisfaction. You don't believe me, brothers? Those of you who haven't gone yet, when they're shaving your head, we'll talk then. Okay? Now, you tell me, brothers and sisters, if things that in and of themselves don't have too much value except that Allah says it's associated with me, now it has this much sanctity, now let's go to Karbala. Okay? What was the verse saying? It said, whoever magnifies, whoever makes a big deal about, whoever gives importance, whoever glorifies and sanctifies the sha'airullah. Brothers and sisters, if the Kaaba, which is just stones, becomes so important because of its association with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Imam Hussein is anything lower than that? Imam Hussein in and of himself is important. In and of himself, he's an imam. He's not one of the sha'airullah. If Safa and Marwa, now this is getting poetic a little bit, if Safa and Marwa are of the sha'airullah, then the little hill that they say, Tal Zainabiyya, that Bibi Zainab went on to see the maqtal of Imam Hussein, or some say she would go back and forth from it. It can't be one of the sha'airullah. Of course it can. What we do, Safa and Marwa, is symbolic. Nothing really happened. What did it end with? It ended with a stream of water called the Zamzam coming out of the ground. That's what it ended with. But this one, Tal Zainabiyya, it didn't end with water, it ended with blood. So all of Allah's obedience and satisfaction, everything is there, sha'airullah. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Karbala, Ashura is sha'airullah, for sure. In other words, if the sacrificial animal can be sha'airullah, then the actual sacrifice, of course it's going to be sha'airullah. If Imam Hussein falls under the category of sha'airullah, well, guess what? The verse that was talking about sha'airullah applies to it. What did the verse say? It said, whosoever upholds, whosoever magnifies, makes a big deal out of the sha'airullah, this is a sign of taqwa al-qulub. I want to have taqwa. I want to have taqwa in life. Well, one of those ways, it's not the only way. It doesn't replace for the wajib and haram of Allah. But one of those ways for us to move towards taqwa is through ta'zeem al-Husayn wa Ashura wa Karbala. That's what it comes down to, because the verse applies to it. Because without a doubt, if Safa and Marwa are sha'air, Tal Zainabiyya is sha'air. Without a doubt, if Kaaba is sha'air, then the Haram of Imam Hussein is sha'air. Without a doubt, if the sacrificial animal is of the sha'air, then Imam Hussein, who was sacrificed, and his ashab and his family, of course they're from the sha'air. And so the verse will also apply here at its fullest, I would say, that whoever glorifies, whoever sanctifies the sha'air, one of them being the whole story of Ashura and Imam Hussein, then that is of the taqwa al-qulub. So we have a Shaykh Ja'far Shushtari or Tustari, he has a book. In that book he says it very nicely. He says Imam Hussein has performed the Hajj truly in Karbala. Think about it. He has truly performed the Hajj in Karbala, not a symbolic Hajj, the real deal. And some might say that yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He sent that ram to Ibrahim to sacrifice, there was another sacrifice that was going to happen later that would replace the actual sacrifice of Ismail, and that was Hussein alayhi salam. These are two verses, yes, for you and I. I don't care about what's happening outside. I don't care about arguing with anybody or proving anything to anybody. For myself, to understand the magnificence of remembering Imam Hussein, upholding his name, upholding his cause, yes, in these majalis that we have and everything that we do in this regard. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين أثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا لا إله إلا هو له الأسماء الحسنى والمثل الأعلى تبارك وتعالى ثم أصلي وأسلم على نجيبه وحبيبه وحافظ سره الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأراضين بأبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد اللهم صل وسلم على علي أمير المؤمنين وعلى فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وعلى سبطي نبي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة اللهم صل وسلم على أئمة الهدى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف القائم المهدي حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. Once again, I remind all of us to keep Allah in mind, to keep Allah before us in every aspect of life, and to, as a result of that, to observe the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His obedience day in and day out till the last day, inshaAllah ta'ala. Continuing with those verses that I said that we want to talk about in regards to upholding Karbala, upholding Ashura, upholding the memory, the name of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. We had Surah Shura verse 23 and Surah Hajj verse 32. Was that right? Yeah. Now we move on to Surah Hud verse 120. This one's going to be a list of 3 or 4 items in one verse. Now the verse is going to be talking about the stories of the prophets. And the reason why the Quran, yes, speaks about the prophets again and again. So you and I probably, I've been through this, I don't know about you all, but it's always crossed my mind, why doesn't the Quran just speak about Musa once? Why doesn't the Quran speak about Nuh once? Why again and again, here and there, in different ways, different wordings, different aspects of their story, and sometimes the same exact aspects of the story, of their stories. What's going on here? What's the purpose of these stories? The Quran says, وَكُلًّا نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الرُّسُلِ ما نثبت به فؤادك 1 وجاءك في هذه الحق 2 وموعظة 3 وذكرى للمؤمنين 4. 4 reasons why these stories are related to you, especially again and again. So these are the 4 reasons. And then when we look at the 4 reasons, we see, in addition to the stories of the prophets, the Quran is telling our Prophet ﷺ that these are the reasons why we tell you of the previous prophets. So now when we, as the followers who are coming 1400 years later, are reading these verses, well, guess what? The wisdom behind these stories being mentioned applies to the Prophet himself and the Imams that came after to us. So for example, if I'm living during the Prophet's time, the verse that's talking about previous prophets and why their stories are mentioned, will apply to me. If I am living after the Prophet, before the time of the Imams, let's say, somewhere in between, assuming that there's a gap, the story of previous prophets and the story of my Prophet apply to me because of these 4 reasons. If I'm living during the time of the Imams or after the time of the Imams, then this verse that was talking about previous prophets will apply to me both regarding my Prophet as well, in addition to previous prophets, and the Imams that are there as well. Okay? These verses, when they tell us that we tell you the stories of the previous prophets, the reasons for these stories, which are 4 in this verse, will apply to us who come later after the time of the Imams as well. The stories of the Imams will also carry the same wisdom in recounting them and relating them. Okay? So these 4, I want to say, will apply to the story of Al-Hussein alayhi salam as well. Now, this does not take away from us learning the stories of previous prophets. Sheikh Mahdi usually tells those stories, right? In the Ramadan lectures. Previous prophets. No. This is saying in addition to those now, the stories of Al-Hussein alayhi salam. Other Imams as well will have the same wisdom as well. What are they? Number 1, it said, we sent these stories, we tell these stories, وَكُلًّا نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ. We tell the stories to you, O Prophet, of previous prophets. Number one, مَا نُثَبِّتُ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. In these stories you will find that which will strengthen your heart. نُثَبِّتُ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. Nuthabbit, tathbeet means to make something steadfast, deeply rooted. It doesn't just fall out. It doesn't get swayed left and right because of different winds. No, it's sturdy, it's steadfast into the ground. Nuthabbitu bihi fu'adak. Your heart, O Prophet of Allah, we tell you the stories of previous prophets so that your heart becomes strong, it becomes solid. Nothing can move you around. So, for example, when we tell you about Prophet Nuh, O Prophet of Allah, Prophet Nuh and the 950 years of preaching that he did, okay? 950 years of preaching that he did, but did his people like come to him every day with a basket of roses and stuff? No. Yeah, we have the stories that they would beat him up so bad sometimes he would pass out. Nuh. So, O Prophet of Allah, when we tell you the stories of Nuh and all the sacrifices and struggles he went through, then your 23 years will become bearable. Strengthens your heart. When you hear about Nuh's struggles, your heart is strengthened. And so for these 23 years, also you will hang in there. Things will never be perfect, but we have to hang in there until the time comes to leave. If Prophet Ayyub suffered for 7 years, and it's crazy the story of Prophet Ayyub and the hardships that he went through that the Quran recounts for us, then he lost everything. Ayyub lost everything. Inshallah, you all are aware of the stories and the details. Ayyub lost everything in these 7 years. O Prophet of Allah, when they put you in the Shi'b of Abi Talib, in that valley for 3 years, and you lose everything, that's where most of maybe Bibi Khadija's wealth was spent, right? Think about it. You want to buy a loaf of bread, but because of sanctions and the siege, you buy a loaf of bread for $100 a piece. That's no joke. That eats up assets quickly. So Bibi Khadija, they say most of her wealth was lost there because of all the spending that had to be done to just survive in those 3 years. Oh Rasulullah, we tell you the stories of Ayyub. Why? نُثَبِّتُ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. We want to strengthen your heart. Why? Because you're also going to go through Shi'b Abi Talib. When you look at Yaqub, who waited his entire life for Yusuf, and many, many decades later, he still said, I smell the fragrance of Yusuf if you all don't say I'm crazy. And that towards the end of the story, when the brothers come back from Misr, from Egypt, they come to their village, their father, because they're coming back from Yusuf, he doesn't, now they've met Yusuf, but he hasn't been told this yet. He says, I smell the fragrance of Yusuf. All this time, this old man waited, didn't lose hope. And finally, this hope that he had, that promise of Allah was fulfilled. The promise of Allah that Yusuf was given when they were throwing him in the well. In the beginning of Surah Yusuf, the Quran tells us that Allah gave a promise to Yusuf as a kid that you will tell them of this day. One day you'll let them know what happened. لَتُنَبِّئَنَّهُمْ بِأَمْرِهِمْ هَذَا. You will definitely let them know in the future what they did. So this promise was given. It was fulfilled after so many decades. Yeah? Yaqub, O Prophet of Allah, you lose hope in your people and all of that. Don't lose hope. Why? Let me tell you the story of Yaqub and how he didn't lose hope, and so on and so forth, brothers and sisters. You can think of other examples, but what I want to get to here is that if this is strengthening the heart is one of the reasons for recounting the stories of all these prophets, then recounting Ashura for you and I also strengthens the heart. Yeah, gives us hope. That if a tragedy, for example, befalls me, we all have problems in life, hardships in life. I don't think we can make any exceptions for anybody. When a tragedy befalls me, I go to the majlis of Imam Hussein, say, oh, it's not that Allah doesn't love me. Oh, it's not necessarily the case. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not the case that I have necessarily a problem myself and Allah's getting me back for it. No. Imam Hussein, Allah didn't love him. Imam Hussein lives a perfect life. He's the perfect human. And still a tragedy befalls him. So this strengthens my heart now. Yeah? Strengthens my heart so that when I'm also struggling, I just remember. That's why these majalis, they're so powerful. because they strengthen the heart in a way that I don't think anything else can strengthen the heart and motivate it. Correct? So, مَا نُثَبِّتُ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. When we see the patience of Imam Hussein in the story of Hussein, then we're like, okay, you know what? I'll be a little more patient when I don't get the phone that I wanted to get. Yeah? I feel you, brother. Yeah. These masa'ib and musibats that we go through. We look at the courage, the forgiveness towards hur, all of this, how Imam Hussein was open to letting everybody in. Then my heart becomes strong. Oh, what if I let this person into my circle? I might lose a little bit of the spotlight. Forget about this stuff. The heart has to be strong. Hussein's heart was strong. Look at him. And he's still beaming till today. All right. So that's one. مَا نُثَبِّتُ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. Another thing is, when we read about the stories of the previous prophets, it gives us an understanding of, what did the verse say? جَاءَكَ فِي هَذِهِ الْحَقَّ. We get an understanding of what haqq looks like. Haqq versus batil. I personally say this all the time, that Karbala is pure haqq versus pure batil. Like, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be Shia in 61 AH. To be able to tell, you have to be on Imam Hussein's side. It doesn't matter if you believe in his imamah or not. It's not even about that. You're talking about the last of the 5 selected, special servants of Allah, the 5 Ashabul Kisa. It's not rocket science. You don't have to be a Shia. There were Uthmanis who were on his side. Because they understand, at the end of the day, you don't spill this person's blood. Haqq in its entirety shows itself there. In the story of the prophets also, haqq becomes clear to a person. For example, just because you're the minority doesn't mean you're on the wrong side necessarily. That's always been the case with the prophets. كَم مِّن فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةً كَثِيرَةً بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. How so many smaller groups have overtaken and defeated bigger groups with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah? We see this in the story of Imam Hussein as well. Of course, his victory wasn't a victory of sword, it was a victory of heart. Till today, the soul, the heart is all defeated by him and conquered by Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Salawat. The same way I look at the story of Fir'aun, for example. Fir'aun, bro, he was proper man. He dressed nice, he probably looked nice, but he was taking the lives of many. يَسْتَحْيِ نِسَاءَهُمْ. Yeah, he would take their lives of the men, and the women he would keep alive. All right, so now I can tell that if Yazid also, when I look at the story of Imam Hussein, I'm like, oh, Yazid, look at that. They say Yazid was pretty good looking, by the way. They say. Now in the dunya, in the akhirah, he's the ugliest of them all, obviously. But they say he wasn't too bad looking. Yeah, so I'm like, okay, haqq and batil don't revolve around just because Netanyahu's wearing a suit and tie now. And he sounds all nice and all that kind of stuff. No, it's not about that. These things, the haqq that I can get from the previous prophets, that I can get with Imam Hussein, it's applicable as well. So these majalis, they teach us how one is able to decipher and tell apart haqq from batil. جاءك في هذه الحق وموعظة وذكرى للمؤمنين. I don't want to take too much time. Maw'idha. Let's talk about maw'idha real quick. Oh man, I don't want to skip this part, but there's a difference. I'll go through this very quickly, okay? Maw'idha. When it comes to maw'idha, we have a discussion. Maw'idha, the va'iz, maw'iza, we say, inshallah, you have this word in Urdu. Do you have it in Urdu, maw'iza? Yeah. There's a difference between maw'idha and hikmah, they say. Okay? Hikmah will be translated to wisdom. Well, what's maw'idha? Yeah? Maw'idha will be something a little bit more than just wisdom. They'll say wisdom, and philosophy is also referred to as hikmah. Okay? It's just pure, sheer knowledge and information. Maw'idha is something else. And these two are different. Why? There's a verse of the Quran that brings them next to each other. You can tell when you bring them next to each other, they must be different. The Quran doesn't just line up synonyms for no reason. So it shows that these are two different words here. Look, the verse of the Quran, another verse that I want to cite here, it says, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika," call to the path of your Lord. How? Using what? Bil hikmati wal maw'idatil hasana. Use hikmah and knowledge and maw'idha. Okay, so this shows these are two different things. But what is the difference? Mutahari, rahmatullah alayhi. May Allah bless his soul. This mind of his, I don't understand how Allah did this with him. What he had done, what his parents had done, I don't know. But anyway, look at how beautifully he explains the difference between hikmah and maw'idha. The verse that we're talking about right now, the four things, remember? The third one is that there is maw'idha in relating the stories of previous prophets. We want to apply this to the story of Imam Hussein. How? Well, let's see. He says, it didn't say hikmah, it said maw'idha. Mutahari says the difference between hikmah, wisdom, philosophy, and maw'idha. Here they translated it to a spiritual and moral advice and admonition. Okay? The difference between these two, he says, lies in this, that hikmah is for instruction and imparting knowledge, while maw'idha is meant for reminding. Hikmah is struggle against ignorance. This is beautiful. Maw'idha is struggle against negligence. Sometimes you teach someone the path. Sometimes you have to remind them and tell them, oh, don't be negligent here. That's where Amr Ma'ruf comes into the picture. Maw'idha has a different functionality than hikmah. Yes, someone might have hikmah but still go to Jahannam. Yeah, why? Because they neglect what they know. Maw'idha is to remind as well, to encourage and push towards doing something that is right and refraining from something that is wrong. Hikmah, he says, deals with the intellect. Maw'idha appeals to the heart. So one is the mind, one is the heart. Hikmah educates, while maw'idha prepares the intellect for employment of its reserves. Maw'idha it motivates you to get something done that's good. Hikmah is a lamp. Maw'idha is an eye-opener. SubhanAllah. This Mutahari, I don't know, man. I don't know how he has such a way of explaining things. He says, hikmah is knowledge. Knowledge lights up the way for you. Sometimes the way is lit up for us, but my eyes are closed. Of course, I'm still not gonna make it to the destination. This opens your eyes as well. Maw'idha is what opens your eyes, gets you moving on that path. Okay? And he goes on, I don't want to take too much time. There's other beautiful gems he's dropping here. But he ends with this. He says, the speech which originates from the heart enters another heart, and the words which originate from the tongue do not go beyond the ears. So hikmah is more general, maw'idha is more specific. Hikmah means any knowledge that is imparted. Maw'idha is that which penetrates the heart, goes beyond just the ears and goes into the heart and brings about change, brings about action and movement. Yes. Now here, what did the verse say? Did the verse say in the stories of the prophets is hikmah? Of course there is hikmah, but there's more than hikmah. There's maw'idha. There is maw'idha. Now you tell me, brothers and sisters, when we hear the story of Ibrahim leaving his son Ismail and Hajar in that desert and the sacrifice and all that, how much does it touch our heart? Then we go to Karbala. How much does Karbala pierce the heart and penetrate and get kids that don't even come to center or masjid or whatever throughout the year, they'll come there. People who are committing certain sins that, come on, these sins you shouldn't be committing. Like, I can understand other sins, but this one you shouldn't be doing. People who are into those types of things even, when it's Imam Hussein's time, they come. Why? Because it's in the heart. Maw'idha. You telling me there's maw'idha in the stories of the prophets? Yes, there is. But there's great maw'idha also in the story of Al-Hussein, because Al-Hussein reflects that which the prophets taught in his actions and his demeanor. And finally, maw'idha wa dhikra lil mu'minin. I'm not going to open this one too much. Dhikra means reminder. At the end of the day, some of us might say, well, we know the story of Hussein. Why is it repeating so much? Well, have you ever noticed that Prophet Musa's story is mentioned more than once in the Quran? That Prophet Nuh, Isa, all of these greats, they're mentioned more than once. This is a dhikra lil mu'minin. It's a reminder at the end of the day. If Prophet Musa was only mentioned in Baqarah, yes, those of us who recite the whole Quran, God forbid, we would go all the way till the end of Baqarah, never hearing of Musa again. And the main points of Musa's story are forgotten until we go around again. No, Allah has done something special in the Quran. He's sprinkled things everywhere. And you bring these together and it makes a nice puzzle for you. It comes together and gives you a nice picture. Yes. So reminders, repetition is for reminder. Well, Imam Hussein alayhi salam as well Repetition, yes, every year. Why? Because there is a dhikra lil mu'mineen. For the believers, there is a dhikra in these stories. There's a reminder for us. Keeps pushing us, keeps pushing us. Now, once again, if I didn't get in trouble already, I'll say it again. This is a reminder for us to take the akhirah serious. Imam Hussein lets us know that you disconnect from here, you spend more time for your akhirah. You don't worry about this place too much. Yeah? If that's the case, the akhirah, brothers and sisters, I would say the first thing we need is knowledge of the path. And that's why outside of these 2 months of Muharram and Safar and the mourning season is a time to now build. The foundations are laid, and then the building has to go up throughout the year as well, inshaAllah ta'ala. And then the tears that are shed the next year for Imam Hussein have more ma'rifah than the previous year, inshaAllah. I want to end with thanking everybody. I wasn't here, my brother wasn't here. Sheikh Sa'di was here, obviously, and I thank him and his family for everything they did this past Ashra, and all the brothers and sisters that were in charge, and all of the order that we had here. I heard a lot of good things, and I was upset that I wasn't here to take some of the credit. But inshallah, in the future, yes, some credit will go to Rustanis as well. But all in all, I thank everybody who was involved, and even the ones who just attended even. Thank you for everything, here, anywhere else, for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Inshallah, Allah gives us tawfiq, his shafa'ah, and his ziyarah in this life and the next. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal asri inna al-insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat, wa tawasaw bil haqqi, wa tawasaw bil sabr. Sadaqallahu al-aliyyul azim. الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله وأنه حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنونه أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين. قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون. وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا اصرف عنا عذاب جهنم إن عذابها كان غراما إنها ساءت مستقرا ومقاما. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا خير المسؤولين ويا خير المعطين ارزقني وارزق عيالي من فضلك فإنك ذو الفضل العظيم. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا إله إلا الله عظيم الحليم. لا إله إلا الله رب العرش الكريم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والغنيمة من كل بر والسلامة من كل إثم. اللهم لا تدع لي ذنبا إلا غفرته، ولا هما إلا فرجته، ولا سقما إلا شفيته، ولا عيبا إلا سترته، ولا رزقا إلا بسطته، ولا خوفا إلا آمنته، ولا سوءا إلا صرفته، ولا حاجة هي لك رضا وليا في صلاح إلا قضيتها يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين رب العالمين. صلوات.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله وأنه حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ما شاء الله لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Inshallah, I recite the Ibadat all together. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا إله إلا الله إلها واحدا ونحن له مسلمون لا إله إلا الله ولا نعبد إلا إياه مخلصين له الدين ولو كره المشركون لا إله إلا الله ربنا ورب آبائنا الأولين لا إله إلا الله وحده أنجز وعده ونصر عبده وعز جنده وهزم الأحزاب وحده فله الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت ويحيي وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. صلوات.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. السلام على 9 المعصومين من ولد الحسين. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.